Well, this is something a little different. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the first Elder Scrolls game, Arena. It's not really an LP per se, and I'm not going to be Let's Playing this game for reasons I'm going to get to as I go along here, but a little bit of background for the uninitiated. This is the first Elder Scrolls game. Came out in 1994, and at the time it was a big deal because there wasn't really a game like this. And just, you know, a game of this scope. Because, I mean, it's a large game, although a lot of it is randomly generated, but regardless, it was pretty big for the time, and it doesn't get talked about very much. Arena and the sequel, Daggerfall, don't get talked about very much at all. Generally, for most people, Morrowind is more or less the true start of the series, because that's when it really started to pick up, but this is the original game of the series, and I made several attempts to play through this game over the years, and I finally finished an attempt in 2010. It was the first time I had ever finished this game, and probably the only time, because, as you're going to find out, this is a very, very difficult game, and a very cryptic and just unforgiving game. There have been stories that employees that worked on the later Elder Scrolls games couldn't even complete this first dungeon that I'm about to go through here. So I'm setting up my aptly named character there. So basically, just like any other RPG, you know, you get your stats and you can re-roll as many times as you want to try and, you know, get better numbers in your favor. I only decided to re-roll once here because I didn't want to spend too much time on this video since it's just, you know, just kind of a descriptive video. It's just an overview of the gameplay. I'll show off some of the stuff that happens. It's not a very long video, but you get to see a fair bit of what the game is about. I mean, despite its rather large scope, it's a very simple game overall. I won't go too much into the story. You can kind of read what's going on here, and if it's going too fast for you, you can just pause the video. I apologize for kind of speeding through it, but I just didn't really want to spend too much time on the story. I want to get into the gameplay and the feel of the game and what the game is really like, because that's the most important part to me. So this, being an early game in, like, an early kind of FPS, I mean, it's not a first-person shooter, but it is a first-person perspective. It suffers a little bit from having kind of a repetitive and dull graphical style. It's very Wolfenstein. It's not like Doom, which was already out by the time that this game came out. It's a little more advanced than Wolfenstein, but it's otherwise pretty similar. And this doesn't help a whole lot, and the game can be a little bit difficult to control. As you can see here, here's the game. You can't move with WASD like you could in most first-person shooters in that day, because even back then you could do that if you could set up the controls using, like, you know, an external editor or something. You have to use the arrow keys in this, and you have to turn with them as well. You can't, like, strafe. I don't believe there is a way to strafe. I'm just going through the weapons here, seeing which one's better. I go with the katana because it does more damage. This is not a game for the easily startled because, as you can see right there, enemies will come at you out of the darkness instantaneously. And sometimes you'll just be minding your own business and bam, they'll be right there. So yeah, definitely gotta have nerves of steel to play this game, and that was one thing that always kind of prevented me from coming back to it too much was, you know, you kind of have to build up a tolerance to being startled by shit in this game, because, you know, there's a lot of it. This first dungeon, I mean, you get a map, which I'm going to show right here. You can kind of feel your way around. Hey, level up. You can feel your way around, but it is very easy to get lost in this game, because kind of how samey everything looks. And it's unfortunate, but that's what happens. And again, there have been reports of Bethesda employees who worked on the later games and were not even able to get out of this. So this game, due to its very difficult nature, does get overlooked a lot. And to be fair, I can't really blame anyone for not wanting to play this. When I was growing up, I would watch my dad and my brother play it, and I thought it was really cool and interesting. But when I got a chance to play it, I could never even, like, progress the story. It wouldn't be until about 2007, late 2007, I started to pick the game up again just for shits and giggles, and I finally figured out how to actually progress the story. And, you know, I would talk with it. I would talk about the game with one of my friends, and we kind of ran through the game at the same time. I got to the last dungeon before the final part of the game, and I had to give up because I kept getting my ass handed to me. Because what happens in this game, I know it doesn't look particularly difficult right now, but as you progress, you start to run into a lot of enemies who will just slaughter you. Because, what happens is a good number of later enemies in the game can utilize magic, and there's no like rules on how the magic works in this game. Enemies will just spam the shit out of you and drain all your health in an instant if you let them do it. Now, you can protect yourself from physical attacks using certain items and whatnot, and there is a way to protect yourself from magic attacks as well, but it's not as effective. And I believe in a moment here I show off that it is possible to shield yourself. I find a crystal. Let's see, there it is right there. If you equip crystals and other items you find on the ground, you can use them using the little use menu right there. And you don't know what they do until they get identified by a magic shop user. But some of them, you can just kind of use them and see what they do, because you can click on your status right there and then you know what it does. And it says I'm shielded, so I can't get hurt. And I would say that that's a just essential thing in this game, is to get yourself shielded. And then when it comes to magic, you can get items that reflect spells, and then you can protect yourself that way. And when I played through in 2010, which is hard to believe that was 4 years ago already, I purchased an item, like a piece of equipment that allowed me to reflect spells, and that was the only way I was able to get through the final part of the game. And I'm trying to rest here to get my health back, and this is not supposed to happen. These enemies are not supposed to get through here, but you know, it is a Bethesda game, so there is a plethora of problems in this game. You can, for example, you can save and then get stuck in a wall, and then you can't get out, so you're just fucked, you know? You have to have another save on you. The game can randomly crash. If you use your fists at all, the game generally crashes, because it's unstable. It's a very unstable game. What's funny is the name Arena comes from the fact that before the game was released, it was going to be an actual like arena fighter where you just go up against other people, like kind of like a gladiator type setting, but they did away with it. And this is also one of the few games that actually has to do with the Elder Scrolls. So here's some more story right here. You can go ahead and get a little bit of initiation, but I'm going to continue to talk about the gameplay. At first, it doesn't seem too bad. Like I said, you can go around. Once I get out of the dungeon here, you can see town. You can level up in town by doing jobs, and that's always a good thing to be able to do, because to try and fight stuff early on in the game is dangerous. Very dangerous. I've wandered off into one of the randomly generated dungeons before at an early level, and I got wrecked. Because that's the thing, it's really easy to get wrecked in this game, even later on. And really sadly is, one of the things that you can do in this game is find these artifacts that allow you to buff your stats in various ways. And now this is the end of the dungeon. It's also a form of copy protection. What they do is it has you read something from the manual. So since the game is freely available these days, they give you that information when you get the game in a document. So I just pulled it up and typed that in there. These are back when games had copy protection like that, where you had to rely on something that you physically had in your hand rather than dealing with shit like DRM and whatnot. To be young again. So here's town at night. Town at night's not a very good place to be, because enemies do wander around and you can get wrecked in town. But yeah, getting wrecked is a common theme in this game. One of those artifacts that I was talking about before I got interrupted by the copy protection there was you can buff your stats, and you can get it multiple times, funnily enough, because you can only get a quest to get one of these items if you don't have it in your inventory. But since you can use this up and then it's gone, you can get it repeated times. I buffed all my stats to 100%, and I went outside and let something kill me, and it still killed me in like one hit. So this game is just all sorts of broken and extremely unbalanced, and that's why it's so difficult to play. So I'm resting in an inn just to make it daytime. I'm going to wander outside after this and find one of those randomly generated dungeons that I talked about. And basically I'll just show you what the game is, because there's not a whole lot of gameplay to go around in this game. You just go around to dungeons, looking for stuff, bring it back to town. It's a repetitive game, and at first it's not too bad, but as it progresses it gets so much more difficult that it's just... ugh. I try to ask some of the people about stuff. What you have to do to progress the game is you have to ask them where's like the Fang Lair or whatever. Like when you sleep and the lady in the clouds tells you what to do, then you can talk to people in the town and look for where you need to go. But I'm just I'm not doing any of that. And one of the reasons I don't want to let's play this game is just because of how difficult and repetitive it is. I figured a video like this will give you enough information on the game that you can make a judgment for yourself, because, I mean, it's not a horrible game, but it's not for everyone. Anyone who got into Elder Scrolls by playing Morrowind and later games probably won't like this because it's so dissimilar. And even people who played Daggerfall probably wouldn't like this game either. It's just a frustrating game, and definitely hard to get into. It's kind of rewarding when you kind of move along there, but it's just not a game that is that fun to play. I kept playing it what I felt out of necessity, but you know, it's hard to get into for sure, and I'll leave it at that. So I spent a bunch of time looking for the exit of town here because I don't know, I'm just trying to get out because I want to show off one of the dungeons. That's the palace in the bottom right corner there of the map, but I don't want to go there. And you can see little shops that sell weapons and stuff, and generally the best thing to do early on in the game is stay in town to do jobs and stuff. You don't want to venture forth until you gain a few more levels. Because it's tough even at the beginning. It's not as tough as it is later, but you know, you don't want to wander into a random dungeon or a story dungeon and just get slaughtered. Because the combat in the game, just like the combat in most Elder Scrolls games, from what I've heard, it's clunky and it's not very intuitive and it's difficult to land any hits most of the time. But you have to deal with it. Again, being shielded and having reflect to ward off spells is almost essential to make it through this game at all, because as you find out later, you can just get destroyed by just about anything in the game. And as much as that sucks, that's just the way it is, sadly. So I'll find a random dungeon here. They show up on the map. This is all randomly generated. You can't travel from town to town without fast travel in this game. So the world is massive. You can go to any continent on the entire world, whereas most Elder Scrolls games only have one continent. You know, like, you know, Daggerfall or Skyrim or any of that. You can go everywhere here, but it's all randomly generated and it mostly looks the same. So this is a randomly generated dungeon. There's a few prefabs that they use, but this is what they look like. And you just wander around and you look for stuff. In these types of dungeons, there's really no goal. You just kind of wander around and do things until you get bored and then you leave. Only in the story dungeons do you actually have to look for an item. And again, you have to have a pretty strong resistance to being startled, because you know, you'll be wandering around and enemies will literally just pop up in front of you, and you can light the way, but I mean, you can light this up and make it full bright, but even then they'll still pop up. Like right around here, a guy just appears suddenly, sooner or later. I'm just going through my equipment again and making sure everything's good. Here we go, right over here. There's a door to my, yeah. See, right there, he just suddenly appears. So, if you're easily startled by stuff just popping up suddenly, don't play this game. Like, do not play this game. Because unlike in the rest of the games where you can see enemies ahead of time and then, you know, choose whether or not you want to advance and make a move. In this, they just appear, and that's it. There will be times where you can see enemies, but usually you won't. You can, like, what you can do is you can hear enemies, but only non-human enemies. Non-human enemies will make sounds, and then you can kind of like be prepared for them before they pop up. But human enemies will just instantly appear, and if they don't instantly appear, then you know you're not going to hear them before they make a move on you. So really, this is the game. Just take this and add a little bit of a fetch quest to it, and you have the game. I mean, you can talk to people, and you know it does have quite a bit of lore behind it, but overall, this is just what you do, and it gets repetitive after a while, and it especially gets frustrating when you have to deal with enemies who can just wreck you constantly. So I decided to get out of here because I don't want to show too much. I just head back to town. So, is the game worth playing? It might be, if you're into games like this. I wouldn't really recommend it to a Elder Scrolls fan of this day and age because it's just not, you know, what they would expect. And even Elder Scrolls fans from back then probably weren't too fond of this game because it's just cryptic. It definitely shows its age, and it's just hard to get into. You have to have a lot of patience and a lot of tolerance for being startled, and you have to have a lot of patience for being just destroyed constantly. So I wouldn't recommend it, but it might be worth showing off. You know, just maybe you just want to see how it is. But yeah, prepare to be frustrated. So really, that's it. That's all I really wanted to show. There's not a whole lot else left to show except, you know, progressing the story. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this was informative. Not going to do an LP of this game. I just wanted to show this off, so I'll see you around.